Hey there, in today's video I am doing an experiment. I had seen palette paper used kind of as a stamp. Well, I want to call it a faux jelly plate, which is not really what I'm doing, but I'm experimenting with a variety of papers to see if you can use those to create kind of a monoprint or a jelly print kind of effect versus actually taking that paper and using it as a stamp. It just is another way to create collage paper and to use tools and papers and things that you might actually already have on hand. Things like I used wax paper, I used parchment paper, among some other a couple other artist grade papers. Well, actually, deli paper is not artist grade. It is just deli paper. It's used for sandwiches or whatever. So the only artist one I used was a palette paper. So yeah, anyway, use whatever you have on hand is what I'm trying to say is something that has a shiny surface that the paint doesn't immediately absorb into. But I have actually, now that I think about it, I have actually done this when I have painted and I've gotten something really thick, even on a canvas or in an art journal, and then I have taken paper and gone over it and smoothed it out. So usually I'm just getting random pieces of paper or paint picked up from that. But in this case, you could paint specific shapes and then take your paper and use it to get a print from that. So anyway, I'm making it more complicated than it is. It's a very simple and short exercise, but one I hope that you will consider doing and trying, and I think it's another thing or another way to just use what you have, and I'm a big proponent of that. So anyway, without further ado, let's get started. To demonstrate this, I thought I would just use black paint, and as you can see, my goal was just to put some in the bottom of this little container. Well, my tube was empty, so here's a hack that I do. I cut the bottom of the tube when I can't squeeze any more out, and then take a palette knife and scrape every last bit of it. That's what you see around the edge here. And then there's the fresh stuff inside. So it's 2 Mars Black. I think this might have been Blick, and that is Liquitex. But look what it did to my palette knife. Oh my gosh, it is like pure black, and my hands were covered in black because you're reaching into the tube and it's really a mess. Anyway, that has neither here nor there. So what we're gonna do today is I'm gonna show you how to use your paper as a kind of a stamp, I guess, or to me, it's like almost like a faux jelly plate. Although that's not what, it's not the same as a jelly plate, but there is some similar things to it, but without having to buy one so that's a good point. If you do not have one, this would be a good idea for something to use similar to it. And in that you can get some impressions off of it. One of the first places that I've seen this done, and I'm fairly certain that's where I've seen it, is Laura Horn Art. She, and it might have been in a class, but I will link her website below so you can go check out. She has amazing art, and I've learned a lot from her. But she's done it, and I'm sure there's been other artists that have also done this. So palette paper is fine, but I started experimenting the other day, and I brought out a piece of deli paper, and I used the shiny side of it, and I actually think I like the deli paper better than the palette paper to do this kind of technique. So that got me thinking, what about this is parchment paper. It's unbleached parchment, so it's a brownish color. And then this is a piece of wax paper. And I just got to thinking, maybe it would be fun to do some experiments to see, so that if you do not have a jelly plate, and even if you do, you could do this yourself. You wouldn't even have to have palette paper or deli paper, which is a little more expensive. You could have a roll of parchment or wax paper. So we're gonna see. I've never tried it, so this is new for me too. I've never tried it on wax paper or on parchment paper, but we're gonna give it a try. So, and I'm just gonna use black just for the sake of keeping it simple, and I'm also just gonna use really simple marks so that we can get the idea of how it works versus some amazing outcome or something like that. So let's start. I'm not going to start with the 2 new ones. I'm going to start with the palette paper, which is what most people would think to use. And often you're already, and I think I'm going to move this backwards this way. I think most people would already be using palette paper, so it's a natural fit. You already a lot of people already have it, they use it, and so it's an easy way to go. And I'm gonna use to kind of, soak it up. Instead of taking this and stamping it like this, which you could do if you had a really large substrate, I'm just gonna use these little pieces of old book paper. So I'm gonna make my marks on here, and then I'm just gonna take my book paper over the top of it. And so I'm gonna keep maybe more to the middle. So I'm gonna kind of mix this old and new paint. And then the other key thing to remember is you're gonna wanna make your marks the paint a little heavier, because the idea is you're going to, gonna wanna get some off of it, kind of like a jelly plate. Okay, we can go one more. So, although a jelly plate, you don't have to go thick with paint. In fact, I think you shouldn't go thick with paint, if I'm remembering correctly. I'm not very good at the jelly plate. So, okay, let's take this off and see what happens. So, I'm just gonna put it on and smooth it out. Hopefully that doesn't, my camera's up on this table, so. And as you can see, it gives a really cool result. Now, up close, and I don't think you can see it, what I don't like about this paper is that when the paint is thick, and maybe the second one won't be like that. Let's just do one more real quick, and we'll see. It is. It has this weird ridge to it, and a lot of times I don't mind texture, and I don't know if you can see that. I just don't like that. I think it's because this is a kind of a slippery, slick and slippery paper, highly. And so when the paint is actually kind of moving when you're down rubbing it. So it's a fine result, but it's not my favorite result. So I like it, but yeah, not to the degree that I like using the deli paper. So I'm going to show you that one. I'm going to use the same marks and use about the same amount of paint on this deli paper that I did with the palette paper, just for the sake of example. So this one I am using on deli paper. There are two sides. There is a side that is more shiny or than the other side, and I'm using the shinier side. So versus the more matte side. All right, let's see how this goes. Oops, I already moved it. Darn. Okay, that's fine. You know, it's not always perfect. So that gave me, actually, I'm gonna redo that because I moved this paper as I was doing it, so it's giving me a similar result as the other thing. So I'm gonna set this aside as a mistake, and then we're gonna try it again. I'm gonna put another layer on. Now the cool thing is with doing this is, yeah, you can just keep adding paint over and over until you, kind of like a jelly plate. I mean, this obviously you can either then use as collage paper, or you can, get rid of it. So whatever you think, and I kind of have a little bit of a mess there, but okay. So, okay. It's kind of doing that same ridge. Maybe I am using too much paper, because when I was doing this yesterday, I was getting better result on the deli paper. Now it's making me wonder if I was using the other side. I may have to do it again. I may have to look at my paper. Okay. Okay, so this is better. It still has a little bit of ridging. That was what I want to call it. Let's do one more. And then I'm going to go look at that other piece of paper and see if I did it on the non-shiny side, because this is not what I was thinking. Yeah. Okay, but as you can see, this turns out super cool. So you could use this deli paper then as collage paper. So I'm going to check that other sheet and see which side I did it on, because I'm getting a similar result right now as I did with the palette paper. Yesterday I was using the exact same side, just having a slightly different result. I'm not sure if it's because this paint is a lot gloppier, if is that even a word? But it's a lot thicker than what I was using yesterday. It's really the tail end of a tube, and maybe that was my mistake. Anyway, it's a similar result, I guess. And so if your paint isn't quite as gloppy as mine, you might have a better result. But either one, I think, will be fine, just as another alternative to try. Okay, so next up, I'm gonna try the wax paper. This is something I have never tried before, but it is something that a lot of us have, and maybe more in the past than now. I think people don't use it quite as much, but I had some in my drawer, and I can see that there are some chunks in this paint, so we'll see. This is an experiment. And you know, not every experiment ends up exactly the way you want it, obviously. So it's just a great way to use household items in your art. Okay, yeah, that is a great result. Very similar. Let's do one more. So you can usually get 2. Sometimes you can get 3. I think it is the paint, so, but wow, okay. Well, I love just how the ghost prints actually, but look at how cool that is. I love that. And I have not collaged with wax paper. I'm not sure how good it would be, but that is really something that would be fun to put on. I just never have used it in collage. So if any of you know, if any of you have used wax paper, let me know, because otherwise I want to know what I should do with something this cool. So, all right. That was a very similar result, and so that just goes to show you can also use wax paper as a stamp, or as what I like to think of it, as a faux jelly plate. So let's try the unbleached parchment paper. Okay. Looks like I got myself way more black than I needed. I didn't know. You know, you just don't know how much you're going to need, and so I don't want to have to refill it when I was on camera. Okay, there we go. Let's see what we get. Let's see what the result is here. And I'm just kind of hard, you know, doing it one hard once over, and that's plenty. Okay, this is interesting. This is picking up maybe some of the texture underneath the table. It may be that it's a little bit thinner, but I do like it. I don't know that I can get a second. I might put some more paint on there, and let's just see. I'm just gonna I might not have put this paint on quite as thick now that I think about it. So let's do it one more time. But definitely this is thinner paper, and it is picking up the texture underneath. But that's kind of fun too. So I think you have lots of options if you want to try something like this and make some collage paper. I mean, how easy is this? And you do not need a jelly plate. Okay. Yeah, very similar, but I think there's going to be a lot of texture from the table. So that is something to consider. If you're using this parchment paper, you're going to get whatever is underneath. You could put a hard surface underneath so that you didn't get those variations, but that might also be just one more way to approach it. So I think what the results of this experiment are that any of these papers will work fine. It just is personal preference, and it's honestly, what is it that you have at home? What is it that you can use? And how fun is that? Now I have all these collage papers that I can use, and I do, and obviously I really simplified what I was doing, so I could have done swirls and letters and numbers and tree, you know, you could do anything, and then take a print from it. I guess it's similar to like mono printing or something like that, which I guess is what this is. But I was thinking of it more in the reverse, like to be used as a stamp. And then when I was doing it the other day, I was like, oh, it's easier to put the paper on there. If you had an art journal or something, it might be easier to take the paper and press it in. So whatever works best for you. But any of these papers will work, and I think that is great, because that just means sometimes we can just look around and use what we have. Oh, I'm a big proponent of that. Use what you have, and then you don't have to go out and buy anything. So anyway, I hope that you have found this helpful. I appreciate you watching, and I will see you next time.